Hello, everyone. Today we are going to talk about macroeconomics and what macroeconomics is actually. So we are starting with chapter 22 of the book Krugman Wells. So macroeconomics, the big picture. First, it is important to understand what is macroeconomics and actually to understand the difference between it and microeconomics. So when we talk about microeconomics, we are talking about go to business school or take a job. But in the macroeconomic case, we tell how many people are employed in the economy as a whole. We can see here different examples, but the general idea is that microeconomics is about personal decision, whereas macroeconomics is about the decision about the whole economy. So that is really important to be remembered. That is the biggest difference between micro and macroeconomics. Now, we have microeconomics focuses on how decisions are made by individuals and firms and what are the consequences of those actions. But we are talking about their personal actions. Macroeconomics examines the aggregate behavior of the economy, how overall the actions of firms, individuals are effective, are affecting the global economy. So that is really important. So in macroeconomics, the behavior of the whole macroeconomy indeed is greater than the sum of individual actions and market outcomes. So, and now we are going to introduce the paradox of thrift. When families and businesses are worried about the possibilities of hard time, they decide to cut their spending. But actually, that thing is not good for the economy as a whole. Why? The reason is that when actually we have a recession, the reduction of spending actually depresses the economy, and that will contribute to laying off workers and creating really, really bad problems in the economy. So as a result, people will end up worse off. Actually, there are several types of economies which we are going to consider self-regulating economy. In that case, the actual problems are solved without government intervention. So we assume that economy can resolve its problems alone without government. According to Keynesian economics, economics are caused by inadequate spending and they can be mitigated by government intervention. So there is a monetary policy which uses the changes in the quantity of money to alter interest rate and actually to affect overall spending. And we have the fiscal policy which uses changes in government spending and taxes to affect overall spending. So actually, talking about recession is really important because recessions can cause a lot of problems. Actually, the Great Depression was so severe because in that time, people actually don't know a lot about macroeconomics, but in 2009, when they have more knowledge, actually, they managed to implement policies that help people to stop the decline. As we know, economy is different in a way. There are different business cycles. That is the economic downturns and economic upturns. Depression is very deep and prolonged downturn, whereas recession are periods of economic downturn when output and employment are failing, and expansions are actually when the economy is recovering. So when we are witnessing an upturn in the economy, upturn in production. And the point at which the economy turns from expansion to recession is business peak. Whereas the other way around, the point at which the economy turns from recession to expansion is business cycle trough. And you can see that during periods of time, they're just a period of business cycle peak, after that business cycle trough, and always actually in the economy, always there are the two things, not only the one. And you can see here, we have a recession, we have expansion. When the economy is going up, we have expansion. When it is going down, we could call it recession, and after that, expansion. Now, we are going to talk about the different effects. We have the effects of the recessions, the effects of agricultural output, and the government policies. All these factors actually have a very big influence in the economy as a whole. Here we have some example, but let's see. So we can make some conclusions looking at this graph. In a period of recession, there is high unemployment rate. In period of expansion, there is low unemployment rate. Policy efforts undertaken to reduce the severity of the recession are called stabilization policies. And the monetary policy is the changes in the quantity of money or the interest rate. So monetary supply actually is really important in regulating the economy. We have the fiscal policy, and the fiscal policies is the tax policy about the government spending, how the wealth is distributed. So both types of policies are really, really important. So here I'll take a look at the economics in action, just to tell you that recessions tend to be similar, but some of them are more severe. Like I give you the example that when people does not know a lot of macroeconomics, actually they had a lot of problems. And you can see the graph here. So now I'm going to introduce you the long-run economic growth. Long-run economic growth is the sustained upward trend in the economy over a period of time. So we are looking in the long-run results for the country. So to increase the standard of living, that is something which can be done only in a long run. And a central concern of the macroeconomics is that how to determine the long-run economic growth. So let's look up here. Americans have become able to afford many more material goods over the time thanks to a long-run economic growth. So that's a thought. Actually, because the economy is growing, the money which people have has increased a lot. So, and people are able to buy more goods because they have more money. And that is really important to be remembered. So you can see that the real GDP through years has increased a lot. So the standard of living, the money people have has increased a lot in the recent years. Now I'm going to talk about inflation. What is inflation? Inflation is a rising aggregate price level, and a deflation is falling aggregate price level. Inflation rate is the annual percentage rate in the aggregate price spending, and the economy has price stability when the aggregate price level is changing only slowly. So it is natural economy to be changing, but not in a high rate. Because of inflation, some countries like Argentina, which has developed a lot before years, now they are not developed because of the inflation. So because they do not control their economy. Inflation can be measured in baskets. So you can see how actually the roast coffee prices has increased, eggs prices has increased, white bread has increased, and gasoline has increased during a period of time. So the example with McDonald's is really good because you know that the prices in 50s actually were extremely low, right here 70 cents, but now they're quite bigger. When you go to McDonald's store, you see that it is quite much more expensive. But the reason about it is that the inflation, because the prices has increased. So now we are going to talk about the open economy. Open economy is an economy that trades goods and services with other countries. So that is economy which have a relationship with other countries. So now I'll introduce you this term, trade deficit. A country runs a trade deficit when the values of goods and services bought from foreigners is more than the value of the goods and services it sells to them. The other way around, we are talking about trade surplus, when the value of the goods and services bought from foreigners is less than the value of the goods and services it sells to them. And it is quite important to understand this, what are these deficits and why deficits are actually really important. So in that chapter, we have introduced the important things about macroeconomics. What is macroeconomics? What is long-term? What is short-term growth? And in the other chapters, we're going to explore actually different things, the things in more depth. We talk about the Keynesian economics, we talk about monetary policies, we talk about long-run economic growth, inflation, deflation, and price stabilities. And in the end, we talk about what is open economy and what are the trade surpluses, deficits. And actually, there are cases in which there is balanced budget, but we'll talk about more in the next chapter. The next chapter is about tracking the macroeconomics. Thank you for listening to this video.